We've seen that for linear time invariant systems, you can get the output of the system by convolving the input to the system with its impulse response. And so basically, as long as you can do convolution, you can get the output of some system. The one thing though is that sometimes that convolution operation, depending on your filter lengths, can be quite slow. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to do it fast and efficiently. And in this course, we've basically learned one big hammer with which we can do things fast. And that hammer is called the fast Fourier transform. And we've actually already looked at how you can use the FFT or the fast Fourier transform to do convolution. But here we're going to look specifically at this concept in the case of linear filtering, basically filtering with a finite impulse response system or a FIR system. And what we're going to see is we're actually going to modify the process that we've looked at before, which was called zero padding. And we're going to modify it in order to allow it to basically become a streaming algorithm so that we can process things as we receive them in little blocks. The aim of the game is that we're going to use the FFT in order to do convolutions specifically for the application of getting the output of a finite impulse response system. This is just a recap of what we've seen already. So the important thing for a linear time invariant system, an LTI system, you can get the output of the system by convolving the input with the impulse response. That holds for any LTI system. Now, specifically, if we have a finite impulse response system, what that means is that the impulse response here is zeros and then it turns on and then at some point it turns off again. So it's limited in time. It's not something like a decaying exponential that goes on forever. If we have a finite impulse response system, then we can actually do the convolution quite efficiently using a trick that we've learned before. Okay, and that trick relies on the FFT, and the FFT really just calculates the DFT. And this trick is called zero padding. As a quick recap, what you might think is that, oh, cool, we've got convolution in the discrete time domain. Convolution corresponds to multiplication in the frequency domain. So let me just take the DFT of this, the DFT of this, multiply them together, and then take the inverse DFT, and that will give me Y. And that's nice because the DFT I can calculate using the fast Fourier transform, and that's very efficient. That would be nice, but it turns out that that's actually not what happens. When you multiply two DFTs with one another in the kind of DFT domain, then that actually doesn't correspond to convolution in the discrete time domain. It corresponds to something called circular convolution. But fortunately, we can actually hack circular convolution in order to do normal convolution for us. Okay, that's a long-winded way of saying we can calculate convolution using the FFT. And the process which you follow to do that is called zero padding, and it's summarized here. Let me just write zero padding. And how zero padding works is you have some input, okay, xn, which is some finite length. So that's another assumption we will make here, is that xn is 0, then it turns on, and then when after it's read sample m minus 1, then it turns off again. So xn is also finite. And then the second assumption is that we have a finite impulse response system, which just means that this is time limited. And specifically, we will call the length of our impulse response, we will call that p. And if we then want to calculate the convolution of this m length thing with this p length thing, then what you do is you add zeros to the end of x and the end of h, so that the length of both of them is larger than the sum of them minus 1. Okay. That comes from the zero padding lecture. Go and check the video. Okay. Then after you've done that, then you take the DFT of the zero padded x. I just call that capital X, zero padded. You take the DFT of h, okay, the zero padded h, and that gives you capital H. So that's the DFT of the zero padded impulse response. Then you multiply them together in the spectral domain. Then you take the inverse FFT. Again, very efficient, and that gives you Y. And this is very quick. Depending on your filter lengths, depending on M and P, this can be much faster than doing the convolution directly. It's not always the case. If things are very short, then sometimes just calculating the convolution directly is faster. But in most practical settings, this for a finite impulse response filter is fast, and faster than just directly plugging in the definition of the convolution. Okay, this is nice, this is great. The problem with this approach is that you can only get the output of y after I've received my whole x. Okay, in other words, what I need to do is I need to get my whole x, and only after, recording the last sample of x, sample m-1, can I actually start to zero pad and get the output. But in many online applications, what we would like to do is not wait until the end of x before, producing some output. We actually want to produce output as we're receiving inputs. For example, you're at the show and you want to apply some filter to the person singing, for instance. You don't want to wait until the last note has been sung before you're producing some output through the speaker. You might be willing to wait a little bit, record a few samples, but then you need to start playing, because otherwise the audience is going to get pretty frustrated, and it will sound pretty weird if you record the whole song and only then start to play back the output. Basically what I'm saying is often Xin is actually kind of streamed in, and actually in the general case it's not even bounded in length. It maybe isn't like M maybe just goes on forever, right? If you have some application that just continuously filter, you can't actually wait until the end because the end isn't coming. This is where a procedure called overlap and add comes in. Okay, and overlap and add is a way for us to use this trick even though Xin is kind of streamed. And so the trick behind overlap and add is that what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, well, instead of processing the whole Xin, this whole sequence that ends up capital M, we're actually going to break it up into little blocks. And then what we're going to do is, very simply, we're going to process each of the blocks individually, and then we will actually have to add up the results a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of overlap between the blocks as we're processing the input. And the nice thing about this is we just have to wait L samples, capital L samples, and then we can start to produce the output of the system. Overlap and add is actually very general. It can be used anywhere where you have a convolution. But here we're specifically thinking about applying it in the case where we're convolving in order to get the output of a finite impulse response filter. How does breaking it into blocks, how does that help us? Okay, so intuitively, really what we're going to do is we're just going to take the convolution of this thing with the impulse response, the convolution of this thing with the impulse response, this thing with the impulse response, and so on, and then just start to kick out the output. The problem though is you can't just do that, because when I convolve this thing with some impulse response, there's actually going to be some effect on the next block. Okay, so that's where basically overlap and add comes in, because what you're going to do is you're going to process this one, but then there's going to be some overlap into this block, and it's in the name. What you will then do is you will add that effect on when you're processing this little block. So we have Xin, it's this humongously long thing. We've broken it up into blocks. X0, X1, X2, X3. Each of these is a little subsequence within X. So mathematically what we can do is we can say, well, Xin, this whole sequence, that is just going to be the sum of all of those blocks. And in general, what we'll do is we'll assume Xn starts at time index 0, and we will assume it goes on until forever. Okay, and each of the little blocks, so each of the Xi's, that will just be equal to Xn. If n is in my current window that I'm looking at, then the value of Xin is just the value of Xn. Okay, and if it's outside of that window, then it's just 0. If I'm looking at X2, then inside X2, the values will just be the same as the values of Xn. But outside of X2, if we're looking at X2, it will just be 0. In other words, it will be 0, then it will turn on, then it will be the same as X for that little snippet, and then it will go to 0. This is just the process of splitting Xn into these little windows. And this is exact, no approximations used. Awesome. So what we want is we want the output of our system. And the output of our system is the impulse response convolved with xn. Okay, we want to process the whole sequence. Okay, but we've split it into blocks, so we'll get there in a second. So this is just equal to hn convolved with, so this is just the sum from starting at 0 up to infinity of xin. Now the cool thing about convolution is that it's one of the properties of convolution is that if I take this and I convolve it with a sum, that is the same as summing up the convolution of the individual elements. The convolution of the sum is the same as the sum of the convolutions, is basically what I'm saying. Okay, so I can actually take that hn, I can take that into the parentheses, and then I end up with hn convolved with xin. This is very simple. That is just the convolution of that block, for instance, okay? Plus the convolution of that block, plus the convolution of that block. Okay, that's awesome because that means I only need to wait a block before I can output yn. I will give a special name to the convolution of that block, and I will call that yin. Y0 is h convolved with x0, y1 is h convolved with x1, y2, h, x2, and so on. But now, we should just be a little bit careful here, because the convolution of this block with h won't actually end there. It will actually go on for a little bit, okay? And we need to take that into account when we're when we're calculating the sum. Basically what I'm saying is yi of n will be longer than either h or xi, okay? And so y0 of n will actually go on into samples into this spot here. So for y0 of n, let's say h of n, this has a length of p, and x0 has a length of, we've decided this, has a length of L. In other words, hn will be a little sequence, I'll just draw it here, that starts at a sample 0 and then go on up to p minus 1. Okay, so that's a length of p. Similarly, x0 will be a little sequence here that starts at 0 and ends at L minus 1. This little block is the same as that little block. Now we're convolving x0 with this thing. So convolution, quick recap, you flip and then you drag across. So when n is equal to 0 for this particular like mini convolution, then we have that, so x0 of n will, and that goes from 0 to L minus 1. Okay, and then when n is equal to 0, what you have is you've got the flipped version of hn that you're dragging across, and that will lie kind of here. Okay, and this will be at sample 0, and you'll take that number and that number, add them up, and that will actually be y0 at time step 0. That will be your first sample. Okay, cool. Now what's going to happen is as you're doing the convolution, this window here, it gets dragged across. Okay, and so at some point, actually the very, very last point, the question is where's the last point? The last point will happen when my flipped hn lies there. Then you've got this very last sample here that overlaps with this sample here. The n at which this happens is basically this length plus the length that I have here. Okay, think about that for a second. What I'm saying is that the last point, so we start n0, then we move this 1 up to L minus 1, but then we continue up until we reach this point. And that is the last n, that is the last sample that we will get for y0. Okay, you guys are with me. If this is at L minus 1, then this point here will be at L minus 1 plus P minus 1. I go from here to here. That's the same length as going from there to there. Okay, so L minus 1 is there. So this is L minus 1 plus that length, which is P minus 1. I always get confused by the plus and minus ones, but this is correct. Okay, and that's where the output for this little block, that's where that ends. Okay, now just recognize that the block has actually ended here. Okay, the block has ended here already. And so whatever happens after this point, it actually overlaps with what happens next. I hope that made sense, but if it didn't, here's the picture. What we want is we want the output, okay? And the output should be correct and it should be final, okay? And the output should really be the output for the entire input sequence, okay? But now we've received the input sequence in these little blocks, okay? We've received the x0n, we've received the x1n, and so on. And so what we end up doing is we first calculate basically the output for the first block, and that's represented here. That output will be as long as x, but then also a little bit for that overlap where you take the last piece of the sweep across. And so you get this little piece here, which actually is after L, which is after the end of x0, that basically needs to be taken into account when I process y1. Okay, so this little chunk here, that needs to be taken into account. But that's not difficult. All you have to do is I just have to add them up. This was the output. Okay, cool. There's a little bit of overlap. Just add them. Okay, cool. Y1, processed it separately. But then you also need to take into account this little chunk of the previous input block. And you need to basically add this to this in order to get the final output of the system. In a streaming application, what this would mean is I would read in my first block. Okay, I would calculate the output. Then I would read in the second block, but then before I produce the output, of my filter, then I add that tail end of the first block that I've already processed. And that needs to happen for the next block as well. So for basically the third block, I have this output here that intersects, and I need to take that into account for my when I'm processing the third block. Okay, and in general, if I want to get the output, the complete correct output, then I have all these little overlaps that needs to be added up. Okay, so it's in the name, overlap and add. They overlap, add them, overlap, add them. Okay, and this is exact. There's no approximation. It just works. Now, but the cool thing, the crux of this is that each of these little convolutions here, that can be calculated with a DFT or efficiently, very fast with an FFT. Okay, let's actually look at a real example. Okay, so here we've got some input, okay, to a system. The input, we're pretending for now, it goes on forever and ever. Here we have the impulse response of the system. The impulse response is finite, so this is a finite impulse response system. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to use overlap and add. So I've broken it up into windows. This is window 0, this is window 1, this is window 2. And just from the definition of these windows, window 0 will be the same as xn inside the window and then zeros everywhere else. Okay, similarly window 1, zeros, then it's window 1, off, zeros, window 2, off, and so on. Now what we do is we calculate the convolution of each of these separately with hn, and this is actually the output of the convolution for this window 0. This is the output of the convolution for window 1, and this is the output of the convolution for window 2. And importantly, although window 1 actually ends at sample L-1, the output of the convolution still goes on for a little bit. And that overlaps with that, okay? And so that means that when we're calculating the final output, what we do is we basically just add up all these, and there's these little sections of overlap. That little section overlaps with the section here, and you add them up, and that's what gives the results here. Here, there's just zeros and zeros, so those samples will match up exactly with the samples that we have here. Awesome, and that's overlap and add. So just a summary of the whole procedure. You need to decide how long your block length is going to be L. And that typically depends on the application because you need to wait for L samples before you can produce any output. Okay, but that's all you need to wait. So you basically decide on the latency of your system. Then what you do is you zero pad impulse response to a length that's L plus P minus 1. Okay. It can actually be a little bit longer than that. So you normally, when you're doing the FFT, you take some power of 2. Okay. Then I calculate, and I just have to do this once. I calculate the DFT of my zero padded impulse response. And then for each of the blocks, as I'm getting that in, I start by zero padding that block. I calculate the FFT of that block. I multiply that with the FFT of my zero padded impulse response. Then I calculate the IFFT, and that whole procedure, that gives me this. Okay, it's exactly the same as doing the convolution. Okay, cool. And then what I do is I add, this is the final output, yn. Okay, so I get my final output, and I just make sure that I overlap the last n minus L samples. Just remember that this is L plus P minus 1. Okay, and that is actually also how long your zero padding is. So it's the same here. You take those samples, and those are the last n minus L samples. Okay, and that's what you add up to get your final output in that step. Final result is yn, but the important thing is you don't have to wait until the end of x in order to get yn. You can get it after just one length L block after getting that. Okay, that's overlap and add. I should say that if you go through the notes, you will see that there's a lot of analysis of when this is more efficient than just doing it directly, just doing the convolution directly instead of using the FFT. Because of course this little convolution you can either do directly or you can do through the zero padding procedure, which is done here. Now, if these things are very, very short, then it actually turns out that just doing convolution directly is slightly faster. But in most real-world applications, the lengths of the impulse response and the input sequences is in such a way that it's actually way more efficient to do it with the FFT. If P, that's the length of the impulse response, if that's bigger than 64 or equal to 64, then the FFT overlap and add procedure is always more efficient. I'll show that in a demo to just convince you. So I just wanted to show you that this is actually faster. So here I've got a little example. This is my Rise Against song. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to convolve that song with this impulse response. Okay, that is impulse response, which is basically a clap in a reverberant room. And so if you convolve these two things, then it will sound as though that Rise Against song was played in that room. Let's just do filtering using the direct approach. So we're just using convolution. Okay, this is just using the convolutional approach. Let's just listen to the output. Okay, cool. That sounds correct. Now let's do overlap and add. So this is the function that does overlap and add. I zero pad my impulse response. I get my little blocks, so I cycle through my blocks. I add up my blocks and I get an output called, I just call it Y overlap and add. Okay, so I'll just run this. Then that's just the definition of the function, and then I just run the filter. You should have already seen that. Okay, let me quickly run it this and just check if that number changes. That's kind of how long it takes, right? So dunk, 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 dunk. Okay, cool, it's done. Overlap and add, done. Okay, cool. So it's much faster. Let's just listen to the output. Okay, it's the same as the output that we got here. Okay. Jupyter Notebooks gives you this like nice time it function. So what this does is it calls this function many, many times, and it times how long each call takes, and then it reports an kind of an average and a standard deviation for how long that function takes to call. Okay, so on average, calling this thing takes almost 5 seconds, 4.97 seconds, okay, on average for the direct and direct approach. Now, if you look at overlap and add, let's time this one. Then on average, this takes 28.8 milliseconds. So it's a huge speed up. I am a little bit pessimistic here because I actually use this L filter function, which does more than just convolution. It can also do feedback and so on. So it's a little bit pessimistic. but I hope this gives you a sense of how much more efficient overlap and add is by relying on the FFT rather than calculating the filter output directly.